Good afternoon. I'm Gloria Nelson with TUG, and we're so glad to have you join us today for our TUG Connects 365 programming. As you settle in and get ready for the start of today's webinar, let me give a brief introduction for TUG, theusergroup.org, for both our current members and those of you who represent organizations that have not yet joined our online community of Infor distribution software users. We've all heard the phrase, knowledge is power, and I can say with confidence that after today's presentation, you'll be waking up tomorrow with a little more of both. Today is but one of our many in-depth sessions in our TUG Connects 365 series. TUG webinars, online forums, and member events facilitate the timely exchange of ideas and information to help you work smarter and with more confidence. I don't know how you feel, but I think that's a very powerful combination. If you're currently a member, it pays to get even more involved. And if not, please visit our website to discover why 2,300 heads are better than one to help you be the best at what you do. It is my pleasure to introduce Dale Haynes with Reinders and Ross Denton of Quality Pools. Dale, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you, so take it away.
Well, good afternoon from beautiful downtown Milwaukee area. We're glad that you're here. I want to start out just sharing quickly the ground rules for this roundtable. Ross and I have both participated in a bunch of these together, and we found that the best ones are when we talk the least and the folks in the roundtable lead the conversation. So please join in. Your experience is valuable and your input is appreciated. Your mic will be muted, but we can unmute that, and we will during the meeting. And then use those Q&A and chat sections. Raise your hand, feedback is awesome. And most important, it is Saturday Eve. Let's have a good time. Ross, you want to jump in there?
I think you pretty much covered it, but I'd like to welcome everybody and thank everyone for taking the time to come out with us today and do this. Like Dale said, the best roundtables are the ones where we basically let you guys do the leading. So we're looking forward to your participation. Please go ahead and throw those questions out. At the bottom of your view, you should see a couple of options. There's one that says Q&A and there's another one that says chat. So chat will be where I put out some things for you guys. I'll put out a question every now and then. Feel free to answer it in there. When you answer these questions, if you would, let me know too if you're comfortable sharing. We do want to get some participation from all of you. And while you can't unmute yourselves, we can, and we can also put you on camera. So if you're comfortable doing that, let us know that. And we'd like to take some of those and do them live during this session so we can get your questions answered, help you solve the problems you're having, and make this really valuable for all of you.
Gloria, could you please put the first poll up on the screen for people? So our goal today is to really share experiences that we've all had with lead times in particular during this pandemic. We have some specific examples to share and also some of the tactics and strategies that we've employed between Ross and I to get things working as well as possible. But we're looking also from ideas from you guys. So let's see how we're doing on that poll.
Dale, what do you suppose the over-under is here and how many people are going to click yes?
Well, I'm gauging if we're in the right spot or not if the majority click yes. If the majority click no, we're in the wrong round table.
Fair enough.
Wow. We're going to have to hear from those that 2% as the session goes forward. So, Ross, why don't you comment on that? That's 98%. That's kind of what we expected, isn't it?
I think that's pretty much exactly what we expected. And, you know, that just goes to show that a lot of times we feel like we're alone when we're dealing with these things, with these problems. But just based on those poll results, it's obvious that we're all sharing the same struggle here. And that's the whole idea behind today's roundtable. Let's help each other and learn from what we're experiencing today.
So our plan today is to really center the discussion around three primary topics. First, we thought we'd talk about the math, kind of a back to basics idea, and make sure that we're all on the same page with the math as far as how our order points and line points are calculated. And that will be, we've got about 3 slides that are in PowerPoint and the rest will be in SX.enterprise. Then we'll look at ICAMU and ICSR. So some very big areas, but we're going to try and keep this focused pretty much around the whole idea of lead time impact. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the math. And I think sometimes that's me banging my head against the wall as trying to figure out how all of this works. But in looking at it, this is one of my products. And if we just kind of review the screen, I should check. Ross, is that large enough for people to see?
Yes, I believe it is.
Excellent.
I can see it well.
So just kind of reviewing what we have here, this is this is a good product. It's ranked company-wide as a B. In this location, it's ranked as a C. It is a class 1 product for us. So from a cost of goods standpoint, this is very important product to our success, making sure that we have these in stock. Looking at lead time, it's interesting. In September of last year, our lead time was 9 days. In December, it went to 7 days. So we're doing a whole lot better. And then a year later from that first one, within almost to a day, it jumped to 29 days. And so I know that this is a product for a central distribution warehouse because it has safety stock. Those of you that know me know that I'm not a huge fan of safety stock, but in a central distribution warehouse, I think it's a good idea. So here you see that I've got it set on 5 days of sales, which equates to 9 units. So when we look at the math here for our order point calculation, it's that safety stock, so my 9 units, plus my usage during lead time, or critical point, as we call it in SX, of 50. So 9 plus 50 equals 59. And there is my, my order point, the sum of those two. If we drill into that just a little bit deeper, you know, it's basically that critical point is my lead time of 29 times my daily usage. So it's 48.3 divided by 28 days. So it's regardless of the month, whether it's February or September, it's divided by 28 days, which brings us to 50 days. I think it's 48.3 divided by 28 is somewhere around 1.7, something like that. And so that gets us to gets to our critical point, gets us to our order point. When I was building this example, I kept going back, my eyes kept coming back to the 7-day number. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what it would have been a year ago. And so I did the math. And this is one of those things where sometimes when you understand the math, when you look at it, it scares the heck out of you. Because if I hadn't updated the lead time on this product, my critical point would have been 12 usage for 7 days because the usage wouldn't have changed. My order point would have been 9 plus 12. My safety stock plus my critical point of 12 would have left my order point at 21, and my max would have been at 45, which leaves me in a situation where even when I'm at my max level, I have less than I need in the current real life situation of usage during lead time being 50 days. And so even at this point, if I had the 45, I would be out if I placed the PO today, because this is how many I'm going to sell during that lead time. And so I'm curious, When Ross and I were talking about this, we were like, wow, we've seen a lot of lead time jumps and situations like this where if we weren't keeping track of the lead time and updating it, we would be in a lot of trouble. Ross, do you want to comment on what you guys are seeing at Quality Pool?
It's probably similar to what a lot of people are seeing. Back in March and April, of course, all of our suppliers assured us they were going to be able to handle things this year, business as usual. A few of them might have said that they estimated some slight delays just based on raw materials, but then they would have a confirmed case at a facility or they had a shelter-in-place order. Some of our manufacturers in the state of New York were closed down for approximately 6 weeks, closed, couldn't access the facility at all. When they finally did get back to work, most of these manufacturers were operating at greatly reduced capacity, some as low as 30%. So the delays started happening. First, the 2-week lead time becomes 3, then 4, then 6, 8, 12, and it just kept growing and growing. And now we've even got people that are estimating it'll take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to fully recover from those delays. So from the comments that we're getting in the chat too, we're seeing some of the same things. Jeff says on average, their lead time is 30 days, but they bumped most of their lead times to 60 days and a few people to 90 now. I thought this was a really good point. One person said that vendors are making more partial purchase order fills than ever before. That's something we're absolutely seeing as well. More partial shipments and more back order shipments, so a vendor that might have filled a PO in 3 shipments before, now they're taking 6 or 8 or double digits sometimes in the PO shipments. And a few other people are basically saying the same things, that they're just seeing these extended lead times, that things are greatly increasing, which I think is going to feed into our next poll question whenever you're ready to do that, Dale.
Based on the comments from the group, let's launch that second poll, Gloria. So while you're answering that, and I don't want to make light of this lead time issue because it has seriously impacted some folks out there and their businesses, but send a note to Ross. We're curious, we're really looking for a story that'll make the rest of us feel better. So share with Ross kind of the worst things, what's the worst story somebody's got out there? We'd be real curious to hear that after we get the results of this poll.
Maybe Dale, if we could, maybe while I see we've got the results coming up now. But if we could, maybe we could bring in Kyle Dino from Kerr. I'd like to bring him in if we could for a minute just to talk about what the folks at Kerr are seeing in terms of their lead times extending and, what is driving that in terms of whether it's increased demand on the sales side or delays with the manufacturing. So Gloria, if we could go ahead and bring in Kyle Dino. And he's going to share a little bit of what he's been experiencing.
I actually unmuted him and he disappeared. I turned on allow to talk and he fell off the radar. I apologize, gentlemen. I'm not sure why, but welcome to the world of online gatherings. I'm sure he'll sign back on shortly, and then I'll go ahead and you can cue me in and I'll bring him up again.
Are you able to hear me?
There he is.
Kyle, there you are.
I'm there. Okay. Hello, everyone. We are seeing a lot of what Ross had mentioned with delays with domestic supply, but in particular with goods that we're picking up from manufacturers that we order in China. The goods have been manufactured after their delays, but now they're sitting in containers, presumably in ports, waiting for ships because there are no ships to pick up the goods. I've got a couple of different vendors who have come back to us with, sorry, right now we just have to wait until we get a ship.
Another common theme this year, I think. Delays in shipments, troubles getting freight carriers. Are you seeing that, Dale?
I'm looking at the polls and it's interesting. Twice as long as 69%, 3 times as long as a third. we have seen both of those. In addition, we have seen factories closed. Some of the factory closures in Mexico hit us especially hard. And a couple of them in California also hit us especially hard with the closures that they imposed in those regions. So we have seen a little bit of a mix of all of those, and it's been more than painful. So when, let's see, nope, we'll come back to that one later. So one of the things that, we try and look at here is kind of two kinds of indicator. We look at kind of a leading indicator and then a lagging indicator. Lead times for us are usually a lagging indicator. By the time you find out that your lead time has doubled, you usually see it in your ICAMU exceptions, and it's too late at that point. And so one of the things that we try and do a lot is identify leading indicators. And so if a vendor lets us know that their lead times are going to be doubling or tripling, that we consider a leading indicator, and we'll take action there to override lead time. But a lot of times what happens is we find out through the results of looking at our results in ICAMU. So I wanted to jump over to ICAMU. Can you see my ICAMU screen now, Ross?
I can see it. It might help to zoom in on it a little bit, though.
I'm going to make it just a tad bit larger here. Is that better?
I could still use a little bit, maybe.
Okay. How about that? A little better?
I think that's looking better. Yeah.
Okay.
While you're doing that, can I introduce one question real
Sure.
quick for you, Dale? Jeff Clapp is asking us in the chat room if others see the need or benefit of SX.e changing usage to a daily calculation versus the current monthly calculation. He's saying that they see significant changes in ordering at the first of every month and believes daily calculation will help smooth that out. What's your experience with that?
As far as running ICAMU, we run that on a weekly basis. Right? I know some people run it monthly. We don't see the volatility that maybe he's describing to need to run it on a daily basis. And we're usually looking forward in our calculations as opposed to backward. If you were in a situation where you were using a backward calculation, running it daily could be a good answer, or more often at least.
Okay.
So I'm sure everybody's familiar with this window, but I'll just do a quick overview of it. This is ICAMU. This is our Exception Processing Center. There's a couple of sides to this. The side that we're looking at now is the automated side. So this comes out as a result of either receiving POs in the exception that I'm looking at, which is purchase order lead time review, or running ICAM on a weekly or daily or monthly basis. And so some of the things on here: average sales quantity, maximum amount, 5 high sales, thresholds ready to expire, that sort of thing. The one we'll focus on today is this purchase order lead time. Right now I'm looking, I always filter this by rank. So right now we're looking at my A and B ranks, which is about 50% of my activity from a hits standpoint. You can also look at this from a classification standpoint. For me, the big thing on this is sometimes this can be a little bit overwhelming from a time standpoint. It takes a lot of time to get through these. And so I always organize my work by rank. I'll look at my ABCs first, and then I'll look at my class 1 and 2 products. So I'm looking at transaction activity, basically hits over here. And over here, I'm looking at cost of goods contribution from a sales standpoint. So I'm kind of hitting both sides of the equation. And so if I can't get through all of it when I want to work through it, I'm working through the ones that are most important to our customers or most important to our success as an organization from a cost of goods standpoint. So I'm just going to look at this product here, and let's make that a little bit larger. So here what I'm looking at is lead time history. And this one, we can see that the lead time has gone from 7 days to 3 days, which sounds pretty good, to 15 days. And because of my exception rules, because it's more than doubled, it's shown up as an exception. And I'm sure that everybody's used to this, but I'm going to change it to not ignore that. I'm going to update the POs, and that's going to bump it to 8 days. And that will change all of my ordering parameters. In the current environment, what I find myself doing more often than in the past is actually changing some of this and not including some of those low numbers. And so I'm going to choose to ignore these second two, even though they're fairly recent, and update it. Oh, well, it's typing is a skill that is necessary sometimes. So I'm going to update that, make my lead time 15 days, close that. And now I'm running at 15 days and it's updating this. Lead time exceptions are something that I look at almost every day. They occur as we receive product, and it's a really good lagging indicator of what's going on. And if we see these for a lot of these for the same vendor, we'll go back to the vendor and ask them what's going on. Here's another kind of interesting one. The lead times jumped from 7 days in April to 26 days in June, and now it's clear up to 41 days. And so again, we're seeing that same kind of thing that we were seeing in the polls, except here I've gone to what, 5-6 times almost from where we were just a few months ago. And again, if we're not monitoring these, we're going to drive purchasing activity. We're going to be buying the same product every single day. And so in this one, I'm going to go ahead, and I know what the story is a little bit with this product, so I'm not going to ignore the second one, but I am going to ignore that first one that was previously not ignored. Let the lead time jump, and we'll go from 4 days to 5 and 7. So this is something, I think that as a group, this is something that monitoring your lead time exceptions is something that we should all be doing. Oops, there we go. On a regular basis, just to make sure that we are covering, that we've got our ordering controls set up, because that lead time, other than the usage calculation, that lead time being accurate is probably our first defense against cutting too many purchase orders and risking of stockouts. Ross, are you seeing anything on the chat right now we should jump in on?
I do. I have one question from Linda Wright. She wants to know, Dale, if you could explain why the new PO lead time was set to ignore.
Oh, that's a very good question. And Linda, hey Linda, how are you? Long time no speak. So let me figure out where my windows are here. There we go. So in ICSR, I have some rules set up, and I'm sure that most of you do as well, to manage what shows up over here in ICAMU. Ross and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I told him a story about myself, and I'll share that with you now. I was going through my ICAMU exceptions, and I was thinking to myself, darn, these are more exceptions than I've ever had in the past. And I was basically approving the exceptions. I was going through and saying, don't ignore, don't ignore, don't ignore. And I kind of had this momentary lapse where I started laughing at myself and I said, Dale, why are you doing this? You set up the rules. So over in ICSR, in the lead time view, you can choose, and I can't remember exactly what my percentage was here to create an exception, but I went from a fairly low exception threshold here, and I basically doubled it. And I said, if the lead time more than doubles, create an exception for that. And I cut my exceptions down by 75% that day by doing that. But it was kind of one of those things where you're used to doing something, you go through and you look at your exceptions, and you forget that you're the one that sets the rule for how many exceptions you look at. But that's right here in ICSR, it's at the company level, and that's where you do it. And in fact, Ross, why don't you jump in here? Because you and I were talking about a little gotcha that we realized recently about setting up ICSR additional beyond just the company level.
Yeah, absolutely. We were doing the same thing you're talking about, but we were setting up ICSR records per vendor. So we had vendors that we were taking and managing the exceptions so that when they jumped from 30 days to 60 days being the standard, we didn't want to have a 50% variance either way. We wanted to lower that exception percentage down to, say, a 20% variance in the lead time because the amount of days had increased so much. So we were creating vendor records. I was told by somebody, I won't mention their name, but I was told by somebody that when you create those ICSR records, that you create them from scratch and only input the data that you want to be different than your company record. And that way, that would be the only data that was accessed on that ICSR, and everything else would default to the company level. That is not correct. So if anybody else has been told that and you've had some unusual things come up in your RRARs and in your recommendations, that may be the culprit. So what we've switched to now is a strategy where we copy the company ICSR record to the vendor that we want to change and then make the adjustments from there. So a little trick that we learned this year because we saw a lot of weird things when we did that.
Thanks, Ross. Hey, any groups, any notes from the group as far as worst story beyond Kyle's story?
I was going to bring Kyle in again. Actually, I wouldn't mind if we can unmute Kyle one more time, Gloria, and Kyle will share his story of what he's finding with his glove manufacturer. Go ahead, Kyle.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. We have two suppliers of nitrile gloves for our accessories for the service technicians, and both of them have told me they don't know when they can fill orders. All I've got from either of them is sometime in 2021. No ETA.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Kyle. That's probably the worst one I've heard. You know, we're seeing people, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing people that are saying anywhere from 6 to 12 months, but an indefinite lead time is definitely not something we've had so far. Dale, I've got a question here, actually something I wanted to read out of the chat, where one of the things we haven't talked about so far is the fact that all these partial shipments are causing people to transfer more product around. And so now we've got warehouse transfers that are consuming all the incoming stock. And so the product that you counted on having is now going somewhere else, leading to other shortages. So I don't know if there's anything that we can say that's going to fix that, but I do think that that's worth sharing. Again, misery loves company, and we're all kind of going through this together. So the other question that came up is, you talked about using hits. And I know we've talked about this in some of our meetings before. What about using stratification? Or what's your reasoning for using hits over stratification?
I like to use the hits because it's easy to explain. I can tell people that ABC products in our organization are 79% of customer requests on sales orders. And we actually treat ABC products in our organization different. We buy them different. And so it's an easy way to share the strategy within your organization. And so for us, the ability to communicate effectively within the organization is key so that everybody understands and everybody's speaking the same language. I think that between the ABC ranking and the classification, it makes it very easy for people to understand. We actually go to F product from a ranking standpoint, which is pretty much the same as it was in grade school. It's the bottom 0.01% of our transactions. And it becomes an effective communication tool for us.
Sure. Well, we do have two other people that are saying the same thing with gloves, by the way. So apparently gloves, probably any PPE type supplies are going to be like this. One person says, Jeff says that their sources are telling them the shortage will go into 2022. So again, pretty bad. And then we have one other person who says sometime the end of 2021. So some pretty extended lead times out there.
Who would have thought? It is interesting to see. It's one of the things that we're seeing just from an internal standpoint that relates to that same thing is everybody always wants to know, customer places an order. We want to follow up on it. When's it going to be available? And so customers are following up more and more often. Our internal salespeople, the vendors people are getting hit with PO update requests. And it's been an interesting exercise internally, just managing the stress level and volume that is resulting from the unknown of when product is going to be available. So I'd like to go back quickly to Linda's question. I think I addressed what was causing the exception there and what was limiting it. The other thing, just from a side note, we've set the rule to be the last 4 receipts over the last 6 months to calculate our lead time average. And so this is something that you guys can set, you guys can manage. And whatever makes sense in your business. With the glove situation, I don't know what I would use there. But this is our overall company setting, and then this is our exception for lead time exceptions at 200% or basically doubling. And we've seen that a couple of times in the last few months.
I've got another question in the Q&A section. Roisin wants to know when we have the back orders or stockouts because of bad lead times, does it make sense to turn on the fixed stockout exception in ICSR? That's under stockout usage control. And she wants to know if that's something that you use.
Where are we looking here now?
Stockout, I think under usage.
Oh, okay.
And there's going to be a stockout option, basically fixed stockout
I'm
exceptions.
ignoring that right now. So it's not something that I'm using right now. Maybe somebody else has some input on that.
Yeah, if somebody else has some input, if you would, hit me in the chat room and let me know if you'd be willing to get on and speak of how you use that, because we have some people who'd like to know.
One of the things that we're seeing, we'll just kind of jump ahead here because there's kind of this is an interesting way. I don't know how many people are overriding their lead time. And one of the things that we're doing with some of our vendors that have given us advance notice is we have overridden the lead time with a freeze code. And so you can put a freeze code in for either a product or a group of products, depending on how you choose to attack it. When we've done it for large groups of products, or in some cases, all the products that a vendor has. The The trick here is if you are going to override it and you put in 35 days as your freeze code, you need to put in 36 or more as your average when you do the override, or it won't use it. Now, the thing is 35 becomes the floor. If your lead time actually is at that 7-day number, it is not going to drop down below the 35. But this has been a very effective way for us to manage this. The gotcha here is because this setting is going to impact your ordering controls. If you're in a multi-branch environment with a central distribution center like we are, if you do this at all of your branches, they're going to suck up all of your distribution center inventory. And so what we've chosen to do is we're doing the overrides mostly at our central distribution center until we've caught up on stock levels. And then we've let the lead times normalize. But that was one thing that we were very cautious not to do, is set this at all the smaller warehouses or the satellites, and then let them suck up our inventory. The other thing that we've done is some of our sales force has gotten very clever at, well, hoarding. And so they'll put in requests for transfer. They'll see that the central distribution center has 100 and they'll ask for 90 of them. And so we've put the message out that we want to avoid that whole hoarding activity, just so that we can ration this out to where the actual sales are taking place and where we expect sales to take place based on prior year activity. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that hoarding.
Probably no, but I think it's just your company, Dale.
Well,
Dale, could we
are
bring
special.
Yes. Could we bring in Linda Wright for just a minute, Dale? Linda had some input on the transfer issue, and then I think she also has some information regarding Roshin's question about the stockout exception. So, Gloria, if we could go ahead and bring Linda in.
Hello, I think I'm live now. Hi, Dale.
You are.
Long time.
Hi,
no talk.
Linda. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. We can catch up and everybody can listen.
I wanted to answer a couple questions. First of all, on the WT issue of saying that they're stealing all their inventory for warehouse transfers, and so they don't have any left to support their sales. There is an AO that can help you with that if you want to jump over to AO documents transfers.
Oh, I know where you're going, and I can't get into AO on this login. I'm sorry.
Okay. So for those of you who asked that question, under AO documents, warehouse transfers, there's an option that basically says, how low can my inventory go to fill other people's transfers? And your choices are 0, which means I can be completely stocked out to fill transfers, or I can go to safety stock, or I can go to order point. So by setting it to safety stock or order point, you're basically saying you can't have this quantity out of my warehouse to fill a transfer. I'm keeping that here to protect the inventory to fill my sales to customers. And so that back order would be forced, that transfer would be forced to a back order situation and not use up the stock I have. So you might think about setting that AO to prevent warehouses from stocking out to fill a warehouse transfer.
Yeah, and Linda, in the example that I had on the PowerPoint where I had safety stock on that product, that is exactly why we do that at the central warehouse for our ABC products, so that we don't get wiped out on those. But that's pretty much the only place we use that, but I know other people use safety elsewhere.
And then as far as the question about the usage method in ICSR about stockout adjustment, what that question's asking is if you say to do the correction, it's that top question, 15-day stock out. So the idea there is if I stock out, then I'm not going to have sales that I would have had this month if I had had inventory available. So at the end of this month, when I look back at the usage bucket for the month of September, it's going to be artificially lower because I was out of stock. So therefore I couldn't record the sales I would have recorded as usage. So if you turn that on to say you want to fix it, then what it does is it takes last month's usage and loads it in as override usage this month, and it uses the reasons selected there, like Dale has SU. So it's basically saying if I hadn't been stocked out for 15 days, I would have had sales. So I'm going to put last month's usages as an indicator of what I should have had for usage this month. And that way, as you go forward in time and you use the backward method or the forward method, you're not having this incorrect month that is unusually low because of a manufacturer stock out. So if you don't turn that on, the assumption is you, the buyer, are going to go to ICAMU and manually adjust each product and put in some adjustment override usage to show what you should have sold if there had not been this stock out. So turning this on is just taking away that busy work of you adjusting that override usage, and it's just automating that process for you.
So Linda, I'd like to bring one other person into this discussion because we've got some discussion going on the chat board, and David Lowenstein has some things that he wants to comment on that. So I'd like to keep Linda in the conversation and also bring in David to weigh in on this part. So David, are you there? No David just yet.
I should be unmuted.
There you are.
Oh,
Yep, I
Hey,
can hear you.
David.
There we
Hello,
go.
David.
Great. Hey, Linda. Hey, Dale. Hey,
Hey.
guys. This is great. Yeah, good to hear your voices. So, Linda, we've turned on the SU exception, and I found any number of times that when I look at last month's sales and what gets overridden, it'll override with last month when we have that stock out for that period of time. But then we might have strong sales when that material comes into stock this month. So maybe I sold 100 this month, and last month I sold 50, and I'm overriding my 100 with 50. So it's not, you can use it, but you have to be aware that you want to go back and review that and see what happens. You do need to look at those exceptions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the assumption on the part of the designers was that if you had 15 days of stock out within the month, then you're not going to have a strong sale month. But you're exactly correct. It is possible that you could have been stocked out for 15 days, but still have a good solid month of sales.
Yeah,
and
especially
that's something you'd have to manually review.
Especially if you had back orders and then the material came in before the end of the month and all the back orders did get filled.
Well, and that might be a situation where you're better off with the month, because instead of having,
Yes.
50, 100, 50, 50 is more indicative of what you normally would have.
Right,
So
right.
it's a case by case basis.
And I did want to comment on something Dale had said just a few minutes ago about the AO option. Dale, you had mentioned that you have it set differently in different locations.
No, it's an AO.
Yeah, AO. So that's universal across all locations. So everybody's got to be treated the same.
Right. We just don't put safety stock in at all locations. We only use it at our central.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So
Yep.
it's the AO setting is, it's company wide. We're only really effectively using it at the central distribution center.
Makes sense. Got it.
Yeah.
So Linda and David, while I've still got you out there, I would like to bring in yet another person, Roisin Bennett. She is the person that has been asking these questions about that, the corrections there. So she's got some additional questions. I thought, why not bring her in and let her talk to you guys directly. So Roisin, are you there?
I think so.
Yep, we can hear you. So
Okay.
Go ahead, you've got everybody.
Okay, great. So thank you for that information, Linda. What I was trying to just check is that on order entry, because when you turn on that function in ICSR, it asks you to, if you accept it, it gives you what is the override reason that you would accept or make a change to. I noticed though, those are the override reasons that we handle on the purchasing side versus having that lost order. So therefore the purchasing person to use this function in ICSR would have to know that we lost the order, which is kind of like mind reading when you have 30 or 40 sales guys. So how does that work in tying off, not checking? Like if you checked off lost sales on the order entry side, it would also add to this stock out usage control, correct? I just want to confirm that. So if the sales guys checks off that it was a lost sale or a stock out, if you will, and the system is calculating that into your usage, it'll just take last month's and add it on top. It doesn't ignore it, correct? Or did I lose you?
Can you hear me now?
I can,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so the way that this stockout replacement in ICSR works is basically in usage, your normal usage would still be recorded. So all the sales you had this month plus the lost business sales you recorded as usage this month goes in the normal usage. Last month's normal usage gets put in the override bucket with the reason like Dale has picked SU. So it's not adding to the usage you had this month, it's replacing. So if my real usage for the month was say 30 and last month was 75, the override usage is going to be set to 75.
Okay, it doesn't, so just say it goes down then, does it ignore it or does it change it to what last month was?
It changes it to last month, which is exactly David's point. David was saying,
yeah.
I could have had 15 days of stock out. So this process said, oh, I'm going to set it to 75. But in reality, I sold 200 in the other 15 days when I wasn't
Right.
stocked out.
Okay, thank you.
Great. That's exactly what we want, is for you guys to be chiming in like that. So thank you, Linda, David, Roisin. Appreciate you guys being part of the discussion. And we're going to bring another person in now with a couple of questions, Dale. This is Brian Roller. And Brian brought up in the chat that he would like to know proactively, how do you update lead times when there are wide swings among different products from the vendor? Brian, would you like to maybe expand on that question a little bit and just let us know? You had mentioned one possible solution, but go ahead and let us know where you're going with that.
Sure, thanks for the time. When you have a vendor that feeds you weekly or monthly lead time updates, let's take Kohler Company, for example. You know, you might have, I don't know, 30,000 products set up in your database. You want to update the lead times. You're not going to do that manually. So currently they really don't get done only through lead times. How do we proactively, or is there anyone out there that proactively updates those? And how do they do that? Do you do a custom queue or something like that? I'm just trying to get ideas of what other people do to handle that.
For us, there's a couple of different ways we do it. Obviously, we handle it the one-offs, what you're seeing here. Where we have done it vendor-wide, we've created manual product lists where we've selected the warehouses, the vendors, the product lines, so we can get reasonably granular. You always have to remember to check the number of products to create, and then we're basically using the mass update functionality to set the frozen lead time for that vendor. And so this is a way that you can go through and do some mass updates to your vendor. And we've done this on about 3 of our vendors, where they've basically given us some very depressing lead time advice so that we can at least get those closer. You know, the problem with this is they'll say all of our products are 5 weeks, but there are some products that are still shipping in 7 days, 10 days. And so you're overstocking on those to some extent. But if you want to make that broad swipe, creating the manual list in ICAMU, or you can create it from Excel and then import the Excel spreadsheet for warehouses if you want to get, if you want to get more granular that way. But either one of these, I think, are extremely valuable and useful tools to create large lists, to do mass maintenance, to force lead times in.
Brian, do you use any third-party tools, or do you guys do anything with Q&Ds in-house?
Oh yeah, to both of those, sure. We use Epicube on one side on product data. We also use Akinio, which is more of a PIM software, and then we'll use custom queues often.
Okay, all right. One of the things that we've done here, I don't use any of those products specifically, but we do a lot of extracting information from ICSP, ICSW, using an ODBC connection with Excel. So we've done this with some of our larger suppliers where we're pulling out ICSW records. You can do the same thing with ICSL, I believe, and pull the information out with an ODBC connection and then pushing back in what we want it to be with Grey Wolf. And so we've been using that, and we save copies because we don't know that these lead times are going to stay where they're at forever. But we did want to take at least our biggest suppliers and bump those out to something more realistic, so we're not constantly getting exceptions when ICAM runs.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a few different ways to attack this. ICAMU is our tool of choice because as you update things, your lead time and all the other ordering controls, or your order points and line points change dynamically as you do your mass maintenance. And so for us internally, this is our tool of choice for doing that, although we are guilty of using MITS and Hyperion to create lists that will import into ICAMU to do the same thing. So it depends on how granular you need to get for that. And then we monitor the exceptions from there. So even the vendors where we've put extended lead times in across the vendor offering, we've still run into situations where we're getting lead time exceptions on the higher side and on the lower side as well. You know, we ought to launch that third poll. Do you think, Ross?
Actually, Brian had one other question,
yeah.
I believe. Brian, did we take care of your other one already, or would you like to ask that one right now?
Yeah, I'm lost in the conversation. Linda, when she first jumped in, she was talking about transfers, depleting inventory. She had mentioned that the AO setting where you can fill down to safety. Does anyone know what the calculation is on that? Is that saying that it will keep safety stock? It won't let you go below the safety stock value, or is it?
Yeah, it's during
let you
backorder
get to
fill.
critical.
It's during backorder fill. So basically,
Sure.
I'm filling a warehouse transfer to give goods to someone else. And it basically says, instead of taking all the stock available to fill that warehouse transfer, I'm only going to go to whatever my safety is. So like the product that Dale had up earlier, his safety was 9. So basically, it would keep 9 on hand and back order the WT.
Okay, that's exactly what I want to know. Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Linda, once again. Dale, one quick question before we go to that next poll question. Is there a way to see who made an ICAMU mass update? This is something I'm not familiar with because I don't do anything with the audit around here. So are you aware of a place where you can see who made a mass update through ICAMU?
I don't know. I think the audit functionality would be the primary method. Linda, you may want to jump in and answer that.
Yes, we use audit at our company. And yes, if you do things to ICAMU, it does record in the audit. That's the only place. There isn't really any history to say these are the ICAMU mass updates that have been done by different people. There's no trail. It would only be through audit. Now, there is also, you could use data conversion in some particular cases to make some changes. And there's also a new feature called mass maintenance that's available in web only. But I don't believe any of those have any sort of a tracking other than audit would be the only place you would see the changes.
Perfect. All right, thanks a lot. And Dale, do you want to go ahead and go on to poll question number 3?
Yeah, Gloria, would you launch poll number 3, please?
Are you seeing below critical in POERA more often? Are you cutting more POs? I have a feeling this is going to go a lot like our first question.
Yeah, this one will be an interesting one. It's I was looking at some of our data today, and it occurred to me that we should have added a third one to there about PO lines. I'll share some of the information on our year-to-date results relating to this. But again, I'm curious how people are doing on this and what they're seeing. If you think about it in a way, this is a churning question.
Sure, I will tell you from my experience, we're definitely seeing below critical and a lot more POs. And I think some of that is just based on what your response is to the change in lead times. You know, we had excellent demand early in the season. Manufacturers fell behind, and those two combined together can hurt you anyway. But then with lead times exploding, and before we made changes in SX, it meant that instead of cutting a PO once every 30 days, we were doing it about, 3 times every 10 days because we didn't have good lead time data in there.
Right. What's our guests out there, our participants out there saying about the reason that they're cutting more POs?
Well, earlier somebody had mentioned that it was in response to transferring more things, depleting inventory faster, and just needing to respond in that fashion. David says that statistically 15% of their items have lead time increases of 50% or more. And that's where it hurts. If your lead time jumps from 3 days to 6 days, it's not a big deal. But if you've got a vendor that was 2 to 3 weeks, and now all of a sudden they're 4 to 6, that hurts.
Yeah, I think that this really goes back to what we're seeing as distribution entities, that our lead times are going a little bit crazy, and it's perhaps a little difficult to keep up with that. For us, monitoring the ICAMU exceptions have been very painful and very much of a lifesaver. Managing, just keeping that on track.
Your report is ready.
So what do you think about these poll results? Is that about what you expected?
It's about what I expected. It's, let's see, scheduled stuff. Hate that. This.
Gotta love the automatic stuff, right?
Gotta love automatic. I thought I turned everything that I could have off, and I didn't turn that off. I'll show our results here. I'm gonna have to go back to this. Oops. There we go. So, and can you see that fairly well, Ross?
Yes, that shows well.
Okay. So this is our PO count from 18, 19, and 20 through the end of last month. And then our received PO lines through the end of last month. And this is for 3 of our commodity buyers. They buy probably most of the PO lines are associated with them. And I should say that internally, we have about a 5% reduction goal every year in transactions. So what you're seeing here is, for this particular buyer, POs have gone up year to date. This one, they're still down. This one, they're up. So 2 out of 3 of our buyers, their transactions have risen over the prior year. Looking at lines, though, our lines are continuing to reduce, although not necessarily as much as we would like. And so what you see here is more transaction activity at the PO level. What we're seeing here, we believe, is that we're buying more product when we're cutting each PO. And so that's cutting down on the internal touches for all of this. And so for us, this part matches what we're seeing on the survey results, I think. And this points to some of the things that we're doing internally, keeping us a little bit successful in what we're trying to achieve. The caveat being is, like all of you, I have a bunch of POs that have not been received yet, and they are not included in this number. So this could totally turn upside down before the year is over. So I'm very curious to see how this goes as the year comes to an end and some of those POs finally close. So that'll be interesting for us to watch.
Now, are you talking about POs that have landed but haven't been received into SX, or are you just talking that your open purchase order total is extremely high?
These are all received. We track transactions fairly harshly, and these are all received POs. So these are POs that have been cut and received, and the number of lines on those POs. So strategically, we want to cut less POs with more lines or more eaches on there, higher quantities. So we're not spending so much time in the warehouse putting the same thing away each and every day. And so that's what we're seeing here. So, but again, it's that snapshot in time, and having not received all those other POs, we really don't know how that's going to impact these numbers just yet.
Right. Well, Gloria, if we could, I would like to bring Brian Roller back in for one last question. I know that we're up against our 3 o'clock stop time, but Brian had an interesting question and was hoping to get this answered before the webinar ended today. So if you could unmute Brian, and we'll talk about his question about unwinding the open PO queue. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, so I see that the lead times extend out. We keep placing orders on a regular cadence. You know, the number of open POs is out there. Eventually, these manufacturers will catch up, whether it's component issues, whether they're, you know, they increase the speed on the line, whatever factor is causing them to extend, they will fix that eventually, whether it's this fall or next spring. What strategies do people use to kind of unwind that, besides just saying, hey, it's coming too fast and furious right now. I don't have the space in distribution to handle this. What are some other things as we get some tells that inventory is starting to unwind that people use to manage that incoming freight?
Could you clarify that just a little bit? Are you talking
Sure,
about
sure.
the lead times normalize, or?
Yeah, so as lead times come in, so if we've stretched out to from 30 to 75 days on, let's just say, a water heater manufacturer, we know that we need to survive 2 to 3 trucks a week. So we keep placing at that cadence. So our open PO queue just keeps growing. Eventually they'll wind that 75 back down to 30, and it'll be quicker than it stretched out. I mean, just history tells us that. So at some point you'll start to get stacking on the receipt side, where you had a PO that was 75 days and you had a PO that was 60 days and one that was 45 days, all being received in a 2-week period. Are there any strategies or methodology out there that people utilize to manage through that on the other side, rather than just see their inventory grow and have 6, 8, 10 weeks of inventory and then sell to a normal 3 to 4 weeks worth of inventory?
I think that's a really good point, Brian, because at some point this is going to go back to what we used to refer to as the real world. And I think that the best tool that I can think of on here is going to be allowing lead time exceptions to change the lead times without creating exceptions. You can see that here, I'm letting it drop 20%. I think that managing that number to as lead times quicken, as opposed to slowing, I think managing those percentages that are in ICSR lead time exceptions, that may be the best tool. The other one is where those of us that have put manual override lead times in is remembering to delete those at some point, go back into mass maintenance and delete those override lead times. In our organization, we have seen more than anything just how fragile our supply chain is. We think that this is going to be a challenge for the next 18 months, and we're changing some of our strategies for replenishment to manage during that period. So, we think this is going to be a little bit of a long-term problem, and I think that the key to keeping it in some level of control is managing these lead times and keeping our ordering controls as correct as we can in a fast-paced world.
I Totally agree, Dale. Every indication we're being given, and Brian, thanks for the question. We appreciate that. Every indication we're being given right now is that this is going to be 18 to 24 months worth of things returning back to normal. So we all kind of have to brace for that. Folks, we are out of time now, and so we just wanted to close by giving some contact info. I know there are a few questions we weren't able to get to, but if you want to reach out to me afterwards to continue that discussion, and I can certainly get a hold of Dale, Linda, David, anybody else that can weigh in on these. But feel free to reach out to me via email. My email address is very simple. It's just Ross, R-O-S-S, @qualitypool.com. Dale, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Same way, Ross at Quality Pool. No. D Haynes, Haynes at Reinders.com. So yeah, be glad to hear from people. Just from the comments we got, there's probably enough information in there for 10 or 12 other sessions that surround this topic of managing inventory. So we really appreciate everyone attending and all the people that jumped in to help.
Well, thank you to each of you that have joined us this afternoon, and Ross and Dale for leading us in such a robust roundtable discussion this afternoon. As with most of our webinars, want to let you know that this presentation will be available on our TUG website for future reference and sharing for any colleagues that might be interested or were unable to join us this afternoon, or if you want to go back and dive into a little bit more of the content, if you weren't clear on something, it's there for your review. And we'd like to also invite those of you who are members of TUG to continue this discussion within our forum boards. And for those of you who are not yet members, please make sure to visit www.theusergroup.org and join today. And for those of you that are in the midst today with all being Infor software users, don't forget that Inforum is next week, September 15th to 17th. And again, also our next partner webinar being presented by Profit2 will take place a week from today as well. Lots of great content rolling your way. Thanks again, Dale and Ross, so much for a really wonderful afternoon of content, and also to everyone who joined us. And as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap. So have a great weekend. Bye, folks.